So we find that we define spiritual advance, to be some common factor of all belief systems, which even includes what we call secularity, non-religion, but has a faith, has a hope in truth, has a hope in a material future, yes, and finds the values appropriate to that. Honesty, integrity, volition, a great will to understand and master something, to create something that you see as good, that will increase your powers as a people, as an individual perhaps as well, enabling you to be more happy, more provided for, in terms of, say, food or shelter or communication, transport, in understanding those things that bring a full society, a happy life, a good world, as you see it. Even this religion of secularity, as I would call it a religion, because it's a belief system, it's not proved. And modern secularity is very aware that, is it Karl Popper came to the conclusion that one of the greats, he came to the conclusion that you don't actually prove anything. You just keep attempting to see if the evidence is consistent with the theory, or whether it contradicts it. And if it really contradicts it, you sort of feel, I haven't quite understood. Do I tweak the theory, or do I search for a better understanding that does embrace this otherwise exception that can't be explained by the existing theory? And you move on to a greater enlightenment, so that the age of enlightenment was seen in a very materialistic sense, that it would bring a better earth, a happier one, and in many ways it has. Our poor in modern societies materially have more than they had in what we would think of as more primitive societies. They're not walking around in animal skins, and typically do have shelter. You may call it a slum, or poverty, or rudimentary, but a great blessing compared to not having it at all. If you think of the poverty of, say, a medieval peasant, but he did have food enough to live, and food that got him through a winter that he couldn't otherwise cope with, and shelter that he definitely needed in the winter, and clothing, albeit rags, better than none at all when you're freezing cold. So, okay, it's at a level that only admits of the material, but it's the same basic principle that you're learning in that secularity of belief. Well, of course, the medieval peasant wasn't in a secularity of belief. He is in some sort of religious society, very much so, much more so than we have today, at least in some formal way. Churches and cathedrals and temple-type places existing. He may have been in himself very disillusioned and very disgruntled. Not a perfect practitioner by any means of his secularity religion. In other words, the so-called ethics of his society, which he may well think were being blatantly abused by not just robbers, but the powers that be, who seem to be simply more competent robbers. Or he may not have done, he may simply have accepted his lot. That wasn't it wonderful that we had these royals that are over us and provide some form of civilization that, for instance, helps to protect us from wild animals and people that would rob us and kill us. You know, some civilization's better than none, and even a bad ruler is a form of civilization. So I'm not clear of how another person sees their life, but I am clear that somehow the same forces are likely to be happening. They're always searching for that which makes life apparently better and finding out to what extent it does and tweaking what they do accordingly to give a better outcome possibly in the future. And so they pursue. Well, we're doing the same spiritually. It's just that we might feel we're finding, or we've stumbled across, a greater understanding of the values that lead to abundant life. And we trust and envisage not necessarily in just the material. That there are things that are important that are not material is blatantly obvious to all life. They experience fear. Fear is not material. It's something to do with what we think and what we worry about. By definition, fear, I suppose. And love, too, is a great experience, but you can't weigh it or, you know. And kindness, kindness seems to be a motivation. And we're so happy or so impressed when we see some act of kindness. But some people aren't. Some people see kindness as a weakness that leads to a life that can't cope and will just be overwhelmed by chaos. So they resist it and therefore live accordingly and ideally learn that, oh, that's not the best way of living. I was happier when I loved my kids and I don't love them now because, well, they're trying to kill me to take the throne, for instance. So I may have to kill them. I don't like this. In some sense, there's something wrong with wanting to kill me and even me having to kill them to survive. I value life. I value some greater harmony than this. But I can't find it. I don't see how it can be secured. So I battle on until death or until some enlightenment hits me as to how I can improve situations. And being kind to them is one of them. So I start to value kindness. And I certainly value kindness to me. And yet kindness in itself is an intention, a motivation, not a material thing. So we start to value something of what we surmise to be non-material, certainly, and very important for our happiness. And we trust in values and principles to bring about such happiness. It's not an insult to reduce the meaning of life to the search for happiness and pleasure, because happiness and pleasure we associate with fullness of life and development, and lack of it we associate with depression, lack of hope, and termination of life, and desperate action against others to try and put things more right, at least for our narrow view of self. And we learn by such. So secularity too is a great belief system that, like any other, surviving belief system, among which we would list, say, all the religions, including Buddhism, that have this teaching and freedom aspect about it. You could say religions don't. They trap you in a particular belief system. Yes, and that's what's wrong with belief systems. Our refusal to adjust it more to our true liking. We persist in a belief system that we don't really agree with. It's not really our God. It's the state's God or the religion that's imposed upon us. And we're somehow not free to practice at all in our minds a freedom of choice of what we value. But we find what we value is not what the religion has. And we're disillusioned with the efficacy of the religion to achieve the great happiness and fullness that we want. But we're still forced into it in some sense. And we're forced in an experiential way too, not just in some specific physical imposition by the leaders of the powers that be, of the religious order or state. But we're forced too by our own beliefs and guilts that trap us into, if you like, a religion that's not truly our own. In other words, we're forced, we're pressed, we're deluded into attempting to worship gods that are not our own. And that's the great mistake. And so a fundamental of all religions is that you be devoted to your God. And if you don't find that, then you are likely to stay in this, you stay in this not finding it until you do. In an Eastern understanding, you have to keep coming back until you find very truly what you value and pursue it and advance spiritually accordingly. So it's a very automatic thing that we find about this universe that we're in. Providence. And if we see this providence as a characteristic of a super being, that in, say, the Jesus story is our dad, our God in heaven that loves us, if we trust in such, the Jesus story assumes you will find great progress. So we have in the Judaic religions, to love your God is very important, is cardinal. Love perhaps expressed simply in saying, no other gods before me. A great singularity in worship of this one God presumed. And in the Jesus story, rather more heavily refined to be not just all-powerful, but all-loving. In other words, as having what comes to be seen as a central quality for you to want to love this God, because he loves you anyway, whether you knew him or not. Now, this is not secularity, this is religion with a capital R, if you like. But do you see how it's just a belief system that seems to bring a better life here and now, and we presume is therefore hopefully instrumental in having actually a wonderful eternal life in some other realm. And this again may be an extremely beneficial belief from the point of view of happiness, joy and peace, creativity and the things we value here in the now, in this physical life and its unfolding future. We may find life gets better and better with such beliefs. Therefore, we choose such because we value life. So we find that life itself and a self-interest in remaining in life here providentially gives us a better life here, and even the possibility of an infinitely wonderful life in some other dimension. We don't know. But the greater the success of our choice of values here, the greater is our hope, it seems, for something wonderful beyond. For hope and the something wonderful is just the epitome of hope, isn't it? And hope seems to be so necessary in our willingness to attempt to create anything here, to live at all. A man without hope stops living and may even terminate his own life, leave alone dangerously walk into deliberate harm because he has no hope of anything better. So I argue there's a wonderful providence we find in the secular and the scientific even that disown religion as such, find that they too are in a belief system and indeed do extremely noble acts. You know, the scientist who works for the good of mankind, we as the secular think of as wonderful. What a blessing to humanity. And when someone, you know, like the chap who produces well, it's not one person, is it? But I mean, the chap who feels he's responsible for producing the atom bomb is so distressed because he thinks, oh, have I put mankind at such great risk that they destroy themselves? I value life. This could be a tremendous help to us all. You know, economic power, energy, to run our wonderful machinery and so forth. And yet it could also be used to destroy us. And they are much concerned. Because there's a nobility about man, in that he does want good for himself, yes, and those that love him, yes. And how many people would not prefer the rest of life to love them rather than not? You see, there's a great commonality of values, and they're not necessarily the values that are pressing upon us from religion and state that is extant. And so we would long for something better. It's all part of our values. And where have these values apparently come from? Well, where they've originally come from, we're not clear, but we're certainly clear they're modified by our experience here. They teach us. And we get better at things with effective teaching. So we are, well, we would be grateful for such if we see some super being has provided this amazing providence. And if we trust in such, we find, and if we become devoted to such a presumed being, we may find life is much better still. And the question is, do you? Well, taste and see, find out. Are you going to miss this opportunity? What's it like to live trusting that there is a wonderful God that loves you and is always with you? You're never alone, always cares. What's it like to take up trusting in such? Oh, I can't do that, it's make-believe. Okay. If you consider what you call make-believe a superior way to go, then that's the way you must go. But I think you'll find out you're wrong. And you'll look around and you'll see some people who seem to be much happier than yourself. Wouldn't it be wise to check out what's making them so in such preferred state? Or perhaps you don't see that. You see these other people as not great saints, but stupid weirdos that get crucified for their trouble. Well, I'm not going that way, mate. Okay. Perhaps you misunderstood the story. Perhaps the story was fake. But whatever it is, whatever you truly value, follow it and find out the consequence. You'll find that if you personify what you truly value into your view of your God, your dearest friend, that your life becomes wonderful very quickly. Taste and see, for goodness sake. Don't miss this opportunity, dear one. Please don't miss this opportunity. I mean, I don't want to badger you, but I'm so concerned that you're missing such wonderful blessing. Lord bless you and keep you. And you are blessed and kept, whether you know it or not, from my belief point of view. And I commend it to you. Bless you. Thank you, Heavenly Dad.